Bitcoin has been really following this bearish fractal for a while, very much mimicking what we're seeing in 2021. We're currently in phase A to B, and maybe in fact with this recent rejection we might be enjoying the very beginnings of phase B to C for Bitcoin. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future, like the video if you enjoy videos like this going forward, and let's dive right into it. So very similar price behavior here. We're seeing rejection at the very lower high resistance right over here. Very similar to 2021 in the sense that we also developed a lower high here as well after a initial relief rally from A to B. So A to B was brewing for quite a while over the past few weeks, holding this 25k region as a support quite well for a continued amount of time. But then we broke out and then rejected at this point B here at the lower high. And what's interesting about this mimicking also of 2021 is the fact that we've overextended beyond this bull market cluster of moving averages, the green 21-week EMA and the purple 50-week EMA, just like we did in 2021. This is where we, actually 2022 in fact, that we had this overextension beyond the bull market support band. And while we were able to hold above here for quite a while, for 2.5 weeks, ultimately we weekly candle close below this cluster of moving averages. And in the subsequent weeks of that downside continuation, you can see that there's an upside wick right over here, wicking into those bull market cluster of moving averages, turning them back into a new resistance. So at the moment, if we get something like a weekly close below the bull market support band, then we're probably going to see confirmation back into 26k. And just looking back and zooming out a bit more in terms of this fractal, we're seeing not only the same thing in this cycle and in the previous 2022 cycle, we're also seeing the same thing in 2019, which is also a pre-halving year, just like we're in the pre-halving year right now as well. And you can see at this point in time, we also formed a lower high after a relief rally from a very key support right over here. So this key support developed an M-shaped like formation initially, so a double top formation, very similar like we saw a double top formation form here, but then that relief rally distorted that M-shaped like double top formation, that relief rally. The same thing here, a relief rally distorting the M-shaped formation, faking people out and giving the impression that we're not going to see bearish reversal from that double top. But then ultimately we lose that key base of support in the same way that a double top would actually validate, where we break down from here, turn that level back into a new resistance before dropping further down. And you can see the same exact price behavior right over here. After the relief rally, we just rally to a new lower high and then lose this level, turn it into a new resistance, and then drop further. So exactly the same thing could be playing out right over here, where we're bouncing from 26k, lower high once again. And if we do revisit that support area, we really need to start questioning, is this level weakening as a support? Are we actually going to lapse, break down, and then potentially turn it into a new resistance before further downside? And loads of people in this phase right over here, and we need to zoom in on that phase. That's going to be phase C to D, and a lot of people are going to think that's going to be the bottom, because downside wicking or any sort of brief crash here, that's going to give an impression that, okay, we've bottomed. We needed to bottom a little bit lower than we did right over here in the 26k region. Now we're going to just continue that uptrend. But the thing about phase C to D is that we might actually see a rejection at 26k after losing it as a support, and at best we could see an upside wicking scenario back into the lower high resistance here and reject from there, and then ultimately weekly close below 26k to begin phase D to E, which should be the last phase. So at the moment, phase A to B, really difficult to say. We may have confirmed the end of this phase, or we're transitioning from phase A to B to C right now. We're in this transitional phase, and for phase B to C to really confirm, we need to lose the base of 25 to 26k. That's essentially how I'm going to be looking at it. But more on this fractal right over here is that we're also seeing overextension beyond the bull market cluster of moving averages. We saw that in 2022 as well. But we have to also understand that in a pre-halving year, going into the halving year in 2020, for instance, you can see that even though this bearish fractal isn't around these bull market EMAs, you can see that we actually see overextension in this phase of the fractal, overextension towards the upside, and then downside continuation below these bull market support bands, and then we overextend beyond them again in the halving year, and then downside extension as well. So we are currently seeing overextension, just like we saw in 2022, but we'll probably also see downside extension below these moving averages in the same way that we saw that in the pre-halving year of 2019. Lots of just volatility around these EMAs is something that we can expect going forward. That's typically what happens in a pre-halving year, and it's just typical of macro accumulation in preparation for that post-halving rally. And this is the post-halving rally right over here. Once we've actually managed to stay above these EMAs after we've performed a bottom in the pre-halving, or at least the halving year, we then just hold support quite effortlessly. Right over here, we hold support quite well, going to new all-time highs, and that may very well be the case in 2024 as well. But until then, we're probably going to see a lot of oscillation in and around these moving averages. And for the time being, we can actually see that we're trying to hold this as a support. So we've upside deviated beyond the cluster of moving averages. Once again, we've performed a upside wick beyond that lower high resistance. Upside wicks have really been something of a recurring tendency over the past months, really. This lower high continues to act as a point of rejection. And what we're seeing right over here in terms of the weekly candlestick formation, this is very similar to a hanging man bearish candlestick formation. So you have this sort of candlestick here and the corresponding red candlestick like this. So it hasn't really completed this hanging man formation, but we tend to see a doji-like candle form at the highs of this candlestick formation, and it's really interesting to see that we're seeing this here at a key lower high resistance, confirming this candlestick. And of course it's not textbook, because a textbook one would see this red candle go all the way here, but the reason that we're not actually revisiting these lows here is because we're technically in a retest of this bull market support band right now. But this sort of hanging man formation, it's not a textbook one. However, if we do see these bull market support bands lose as a support, then we'll probably see further downside, and this formation will actually have the price action revisit this 25-26k region, and that's when we're going to really see a test for whether this is actually a weakening support. So at the moment, last week we saw a retest of the top green bull market moving average, the 21 week. Very, very weak reaction right over here, to the point where this candle had to revisit this level for another retest. So we have to see further downside to retest lower moving averages, because we can't find support at those higher levels, which just shows to us that we're weakening here. Bitcoin is weakening in its support and trying to find support at this bull market support band, at these cluster of moving averages. And a weekly close below this bull market support band, once again, that could be quite a bearish situation. So we already saw a weekly close below here, and that actually preceded a bit more downside into this downside wick here. And of course, we weekly closed here, turned it into a resistance, and then turned it into resistance again, and then we saw downside continuation. Same thing could happen here. Weekly close below this bull market cluster of moving averages, will turn it into resistance probably at some point, and then drop back in here. And that's going to be a really crucial retest for Bitcoin as part of this fractal, because if we lose 25-26k, then once again, going back to that fractal, then we're going to be very much midway from phase B to C. So at the moment, we're in a transitional period because we've seen A to B take place already, and now we might be seeing B to C beginning, but we're only going to see confirmation of B to C continuing once we've lost 25, 26K. And at the moment, that's where we're headed. And that's where we might be seeing a weakening in support to fully confirm this fractal going forward. But nonetheless, we're still in a confirmed bull market. And if you want to learn why, subscribe to our channel and check out this video in the top right hand corner, and I'll speak to you in that video. Speak to you soon.